At a number 10 spot, we have Janet's ghost. According to legend, Janet worked as a young Chinese nurse in Kuching's public hospital. According to the story, she vanished sometime in the late 1960s. This occurred when kidnappings in the city were on the rise. The only things that anyone had determined was that the kidnappings might have been related to the building of Satok Bridge. The territorial spirits would be annoyed if the bridge's constructions were delayed. To appease them, human sacrifices had to be made. Apparently, they preferred to sacrifice virgin girls, but only to use their heads. This meant they would be decapitated and their heads would be embedded in the concrete pillars to strengthen the bridge. Eventually, they found Janet's headless body, confirming the police's theory. Her grieving parents went on to bury her in a red dress and red shoes. So many people believe that if a woman passes away wearing all red, then she will return as a vengeful spirit.
Now at number 9, Pontianak. The word Pontianak is a combination of 3 words: Pana, lady, Mati, dead, and Anak, child. Pontianak takes after a lady who lost her baby during childbirth. She is often dressed in white and has long black hair, and is known to seek revenge against men. Many have said they have encountered this bitter being while on the road in the dark hours. When the Pontianak is near, dogs howl and you can hear a baby crying, and you smell the scent of jasmine flowers out of nowhere. That's how you'd know this vengeful creature is in the area. During the day, the Pontianak hides in banana trees, and she starts her hunt when there's a full moon.
At a number 8 spot, we have the Krak Highway. This Malaysian highway is said to be the world's most haunted highway. It is a 70-kilometer long interstate highway that connects Kuala Lumpur to Genting Highlands. The amount of paranormal reports on this highway alone is enough to make someone take a longer detour instead. The first of these incidents happened when a couple and their baby were returning one night from vacation. The car suddenly breaks down on the side of the road, and as he looks for someone to help, he notices the highway is completely empty. So he walks to find the closest nearby phone booth to call for help, but the man never ended up returning. After a few hours of waiting, his wife calls the police, but when they arrive, they tell her to step out of the vehicle and not look behind them. After walking a distance away, she turns around to see her husband's headless body being devoured by a banshee-like creature on the top of their car. As well, on Krak Highway, if you find yourself stuck behind a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, get away from it. This vehicle is known to stalk drivers and cause them to get into fatal accidents, so drive extra safe when you're in Malaysia.
Now number 7, Reddit story. The story is posted by someone on Reddit who lives in Malaysia. I saw a ghost when I was like 9 or 10 years old. It was early in the morning, about 6:30 a.m., and I was having breakfast alone in the kitchen when this rotten face, twice as big as a normal head, reared from a corner that led to the back door. One of its eyes was hanging out of its socket. There were holes in its cheeks, stuff oozing out, worms, etc. I was stunned for a good 5 seconds staring at it, and then I snapped and ran upstairs and got my dad. My dad came down, and of course that thing was gone, and my dad showed me the back door was locked. We moved out from the house about 5 years after that, and only then everyone shared their story. My mom said a neighbor saw a hairy leg as big as a coconut tree trunk behind the house. My brother said his friends saw some people dancing in the vicinity while carrying a coffin.
At a number 6 spot, we have the Orang Minyak. The Orang Minyak, or the oily man, is a creature that takes the shape of a man that is covered in a thick, murky black oil. It comes out at the darkest time of night and when it's almost impossible to see it. It snatches young women in rural villages when they're sleeping, and this is why many fear oil spills in the country, oddly enough. It can shapeshift into oil to slip through cracks in the walls and the floor, so basically there's no place to hide from the Orang Minyak. In Malaysia's past, a young woman were told to wear clothing that was worn by a man so that this creature couldn't catch their scent. Keeping a mirror nearby is a must because this creature does not like its own reflection. This became such a big urban legend that some girls would cover their rooms in complete mirrors, but in my opinion, that is just as creepy as this creature.
Halfway number 5, Villa Nabila. Some people will be able to connect this location with the 2015 Malaysian horror film by the same name. As the legend goes, a house help, in a fit of intense jealousy, killed all the family members residing in this villa. She buried their bodies all over the premises, but surprisingly, even the investigators could not locate the remains. The spot came into focus once again in 2013 when 23 teenagers were reported to have gone missing at Villa Nabila.
At a number 4 spot, we have Pulau Jerijak. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. Pulau Jerijak is a small island located alongside Perang Island, and if the shark-filled waters wasn't enough for you to avoid this place, then maybe the ghosts of former prisoners may. This island mainly served as a place to keep the sick, the poor, and the bad. For example, people suffering from leprosy and tuberculosis were thrown onto this island to isolate themselves from others. Reports claim that over 1 million people were crammed on this island to quarantine, and over 5,000 people passed away. Then in 1969, the island transformed into a prison, except this prison would contain those arrested under the emergency ordinance, which is basically people detained without trial. So you already know this gets bad. This prison was very inhumane. Prisoners would be tortured often and left malnourished, which would later claim for their lives. Now it's said that the island contains the spirits of those left to pass away there. And since Malaysia is attempting to make this a tourist spot, many people claim to hear the screams of those tortured on this island, or others fall into a great sickness after coming from the island.
Now at number 3, Pudu Jail. Jails have a history of unfulfilled wishes of freedom, much like the spirits that cannot transcend to the afterlife. Constructed during the British regime, the Pudu Jail confined over 2,000 prisoners of war during the Second World War. Visitors have experienced unnaturally hot and cold spots in various spots of the prison. The execution chamber often bursts into screams, even though it was apparently empty. Despite the fact that it was demolished in 2009 and a commercial development took its place, strange activities are still reported occasionally.
All the way at our number 2 spot, we have the First World Hotel. Oddly enough, this obviously isn't the first hotel in the world, but the largest one in the world, regardless of the name. It is located in the Genting Highlands in the Titiwangsa Mountains. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that again. This 7,351 room hotel is specifically a casino resort, and over the past 20 years of its existence, it claimed the lives of enough people for anyone to avoid this place altogether. Since many people who go there are gamblers, a lot of the people who passed away there are those who took their own lives due to the issues associated with gambling. Odd thing is that people report that the most paranormal activity lies on floor 21, except when you try to visit the floor, you'll notice there's no button for it on the elevator. Guests now report everything you would hear from a gambler who lost big. They hear crying, wailing, and loud footsteps when no one is around them. Reports of poltergeists occur in the rooms and corridors at night, and in some cases, some rooms are shut down because many guests would fall ill in one or after staying in the room.
Now coming in at our number 1 spot, Pokong. In a traditional Malay funeral, a body is wrapped in a white cloth before it is prayed over and laid to rest. According to the Muslim funeral practice, a body has to be tied at several places to keep the cloth in place. When the wrapped body is laid into the grave, the knot keeping the coffin cloth in place is usually removed. Malays believe that after death, the soul of this body will stay on earth for 40 days. Pokong is a mummy-like appearance and is said to be a deceased body covered in burial dirt. If the knot is not removed and stays on beyond 40 days, the body could turn into a ghost and literally jump out of its grave. Only when this knot is taken away will the ghost stop haunting people. People believe that this type of ghost tends to disturb or meet those who have weak spirits. It is common knowledge among Asians that this ghost can move as fast as the jumping vampire. Its leap ranges from 50 meters per jump to over 100 meters. This energetic spirit is believed to be able to roll around and move as fast as a speeding car, and is usually found in villages wandering around. Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Singapore Stone. Did you know that Singapore has its very own Hercules? Known as Badang, a poor fisherman lived his humble life by the Singapore River. When he realized a water djinn had been stealing his fishes, he set a trap to catch the spirit red-handed. He then confronted the captured spirit, who promised to grant his wish in return for its release. Badang proceeded to wish for superhuman strength, and was soon appointed court warrior by the Sultan of Singapore. Warriors from far and wide started swarming in to challenge the strong man, including India's Wadi Vijaya. The two dueled in a series of contests, and the last one saw them lifting a massive rock and throwing it towards the Singapore River. The rock was discovered years later at the spot where it was said to have landed, and not just that, there was an inscription on it, probably to commemorate Badang's achievement. However, only a fragment of the rock survives today. And as it's been said, the Brits blasted it to pieces in 1843. While it's housed in the temporary closed National Museum of Singapore, you can still see it online.
Barely a meter wide, the Singapore Stone is a fragment of a large sandstone slab that once stood at the mouth of the Singapore River. Blown up in 1843 to widen the passageway of the river mouth, this fragment is believed to be over 1,000 years old.
Number 9, Red Hill. Red Hill has a bloody tale behind its name. As strange as it sounds, it all started with a swordfish infestation, where the sea creatures attacked unsuspected villagers and fishermen by the shore. An idea came out of using banana tree trunks as a barricade to trap the swordfishes. He brought this up to the Sultan, who granted permission to proceed. The brilliant plan worked, earning him the respect and admiration of the villagers, but not the Sultan, who soon became envious of the attention. Out of jealousy, he ordered his men to rid the boy, even taking his life by any means necessary. and so they did. The poor boy's blood flowed down the hill where he lived, staining it blood red, and so that's how it's said it's got its name. Number 8. Kusu Island. An island with an interesting backstory is Kusu Island, also known as a sacred site. The island is home to a Chinese temple and 3 Malay shrines. But do you know where it gets its name from? Kusu means turtle in Hokkien, and legend has it that a giant turtle transformed into the island to save stranded sailors and fishermen, victims of the stormy weather. The sailors and fishermen returned the following year and the year after with offerings to show their gratitude. From then on, people head down on the 9th month of the lunar calendar to pay their respects. Number 7. Radin Ma. Radin Ma is the name of the area between Teluk Bangla, Bukit Permi, and Jalan Bukit Merah. Sorry if I mispronounced any of that. As well as a couple of known landmarks around the city. It's also the name of a Javanese princess, Radin Ma Ayu. Her father was a warrior prince, her mother was a commoner, and their marriage was condemned by the Sultan. One day, while the warrior prince was away on an expedition, the Sultan ordered his men to burn their house down, killing his wife. Radin, however, was saved by a loyal servant. Upon his return, the devastated warrior prince left the Javanese kingdom for Temasek with his baby daughter. Soon after their arrival, the Sultan of Temasek arranged for the warrior prince to marry his daughter. Similar to the tale of Cinderella, Radin's new stepmother wasn't a big fan of hers. The plot thickens when the adult Radin was to marry her stepmother's nephew, whom she refused. Not liking her decision, he attacked her main man in life, her father. In an attempt to save him, Radin was hurt in the process, receiving a stab in the heart. It's said that her body is laid to rest at the foot of Mount Faber, where there's a shrine in respect of her loyalty. Number 6. Island of Death. Plau or Island of Death was a former name of Sentosa. While no one knows exactly just how the island got its morbid name, it's been said that the island was once a place of piracy and bloodshed. Other reasons behind its name include the location of the island, which was adjacent to Palu Brani, which was the burial ground for many ancient Malay warriors. Then there's a tale about a deadly outbreak called the Blakang Mati fever in the late 1840s, which almost wiped out the original Bugis settlers on the island. In 1972, Palu Mati was renamed as Sentosa, or Peace and Tranquility, leaving its past behind. Today, it's a beach resort known as the State of Fun. Halfway number 5 is Singapura. Sang Nila Utama, or Sri Tribhuwana, was once the ruler of the Shivajaya Empire at Sumatra. According to legends, he went on an expedition in the late 13th century and discovered an island with a white sandy shore. After learning that the place was called Temasek, Sang decided to cross the waters to reach this newly discovered land. However, a storm appeared out of nowhere and nearly swallowed the boat. In a desperate attempt, Sang threw his crown into the turbulent waters. The weather and the sea immediately became calm, and the crew reached Teluk Blangah safely. As they landed, a strange beast was spotted from afar. Upon hearing that it was a lion, Sang was overjoyed and decided to name the island Sigapura, or Lion City. The discovery was said to have happened in and around AD 1297, and Sang went on to rule for 48 years before his passing. His palace and burial ground was located on top of Bukit Larangang, or Forbidden Hill. Number 4. Sisters Islands. Lying south of Sentosa, Sisters Islands refer to Palu Sabar Darta and Palu Sabar Lut. Many years ago, there was a pair of sisters, Mina and Lena, living by the southern coast of Singapore. Being very attached to each other, the sisters vowed to marry 2 brothers so that they could live together always. However, one night, Lena ran into a group of pirates by the sea. Stunned by her beauty, the pirate chief was determined to marry Lena. When the dawn broke, the pirates came and abducted Lena to their ships. Weeping over the loss of her dear sister, Mina came swimming after the boats. The stormy waters were merciless, and she was doomed eventually. In a desperate attempt, Lena broke free and dived into the sea. The next day, a pair of islands appeared where the sisters had drowned. They were named Sisters Islands by the villagers in memory of the 2 girls.
And legend has it that the next day, after the storm had subsided, Sisters Islands had appeared in the position where the 2 sisters were last seen.
Number 3. Underwater City. Legend has it that Sang Nila Utama was the child between an adventurer king and a princess of an underwater kingdom, like we talked about before. Supposedly, Sang's father Raja had a glass case created for him to descend into the sea because he was curious about what lies beneath the calm waters. He sank into a country called Dika and was greeted by a race of men, and was later taken to meet the ruler of this underwater wonderland. And that's exactly how he met Sang's mum, Princess Mathabu Labari. This world under the sea, however, is scarcely ever mentioned in history books. Number 2. The Merlion. One night, the villagers living by the southern coast of Tesamek were awakened by the howling winds and crashing waves. The dark clouds blocked out the lights of the moon and the stars, turning the world in complete darkness. It was as though the island of Tesamek would be sunk by the raging sea. The terrified villagers got down on their knees and prayed. During this moment, a bright light was observed emerging from the southern waters. A massive creature, half lion, half fish, roared in anger. The battle between the fierce mythical animal and nature was intense, as the sky was filled with flashing flashing lightning. The villagers had never witnessed such terrifying phenomenons before. After some time, the winds began to die down. The waves subsided and the sky started to clear. The gigantic sea beast had won the battle against nature. As it claimed its victory, it stood proudly on Sentosa. By morning, the Merlion had retreated into its waters, leaving behind a bright, colorful trail. Number 1. Ghostly passengers. This story originates with taxi drivers, specifically ones who have had the eerie experience of picking up late-night passengers who ask to be dropped off at a cemetery. Usually, the protagonist in the story is a beautiful young woman waiting on a remote road for a taxi. Once she's in the taxi, she doesn't speak again and wordlessly hands the driver money when she arrives at her destination. In the morning, when the driver looks at the money, it's hell notes. Money burnt as an offering have replaced the Singaporean bills.
Coming in at number 10, we have The Cursed Poem, or Tamino's Hell. Published by Japanese poet Seijo Yasu, it's said that one of his poems named Tamino's Hell is cursed and could kill or haunt people if read out loud. So just not to die, I'll be playing it safe and I'll just show you the poem rather than reading it. Yeah. In 1974, Japanese filmmaker Terayama Suji directed a movie based on Tamino's Hell. He ended up passing away in 1983. This is where people first believed the movie was cursed, since the poem was used and read in the movie. As time went by, people began forgetting about the incident. But then in 2004, one Japanese writer published a book based on the poem, saying, "If you by chance happen to read this poem out loud, after you will suffer from a terrible fate which cannot be escaped." It said that even hearing someone say the poem out loud could lead your life into disaster or even death. So let's read it out loud. I'm just kidding, everyone relax. Nowadays this poem is feared internationally, but for those who remain skeptical, come on, give it a read. At number 9, we have Hitori Kakarambo, Solo Hide and Seek. The name directly translates to one man hide and seek, and as for the name suggests, it's a game where one person plays hide and seek. The instructions are thorough, so bear with me. Here's what you need to play. A stuffed toy with arms and legs, a red thread and a needle, rice, nail clippers, a box cutter, and a cup of salt water. The process is kinda complicated, so bear with me. To start, make sure you're home alone. Cut open the toy and take out the stuffings, replacing with rice and fingernail clippings. Sew it back with some red thread. Give the toy a name and be sure it's not your own. Then go find yourself a hiding place like a closet and place your saltwater cup in there. After that, go to the bathroom and fill your tub with just enough water to submerge the doll. Now you just have to wait until 3 a.m. When the time hits, go to the bathroom, look at the toy, and say, "You're it." Count to 10 and then go back to the bathroom, pick up the toy, and say, "I found you," 3 times. Easy, right? As you're in the bathroom, stab the toy and put it back in the water. Tell the stuffed animal, "You'll be it." Now it's your turn to hide where you left a glass of salt water. At this point of the game is where things get a bit creepier. People report hearing voices, footsteps, and the TV may turn on and off. Wait a bit until it's complete silence again. Take a sip of the water and hold it in your mouth and bring the cup with you as you look around for the toy. At this point, the toy is no longer in the bathroom, so you need to search the whole house for it. Do not leave the house, do not turn off the lights, and keep everything locked, and be sure to finish the game under 2 hours or the spirit will become too powerful to stop. When you finally find the toy, spit the water out, pour the rest of the cup on the animal, then say, "I won," 3 times. Finally, be sure to burn the toy within 1 to 2 days. I don't know what would compel someone to play hide and seek alone, but there are the instructions. Sealing our number 8 spot, we have Gasha Dokuru. The Gasha Dokuru, or giant starving skeleton, is a rageful, mythical Japanese yokai that is said to be 15 times the size of a normal human, which could be around 90 feet tall. Shaq? This entity is born where there's a large amount of human bodies, whether it be a mass grave or a battlefield. This is where these spirits become angry due to the fact that they can't get proper burials. This usually happens from events such as a war, a famine, or plagues. Then the bones of these angry spirits form together, creating this one large skeleton. Despite their large stature, they still manage to sneak up on humans. They crush them in their hands and bite off their head to drink their blood. This creature will definitely give Attack on Titans a run for their money. The scary thing is, they don't even need to kill people nor drink their blood. They simply just enjoy doing it. They usually roam around midnight using the darkness as their cover. The only way you would know one is near you is from the sounds of bones rattling or strange ringing. Since Japan has less wars and plagues, these creatures have not been spotted. But when it does, I wonder how much Gasha Dokuru will rise. Showing that even our bathroom stalls aren't safe, at number 7 we have Akamanto. Think twice before using certain bathrooms in Japan, as you might run into Akamanto. Akamanto is a spirit in Japan that is said to appear to people in bathroom stalls, usually the last stall of all stalls. And definitely be sure you have toilet paper in your stall, because that's how Akamanto gets his cue to enter. He's described as wearing a long red cloak with a mask to cover his face. He'll give you a choice between red and blue paper, and your answer will decide your fate. If you choose a red paper, he will cut your throat, causing all of your clothes to turn into a bright crimson color. However, the other option is not any better. If you choose the blue paper, he will strangle you, making your face turn blue. So you basically have zero chance, because if you try to pick another color that he doesn't offer, he will kidnap you and bring you to his lair where it's unknown what he will do to you. So is there any way to make it out alive? Well, the best way to answer Akamanto is to simply say, "I do not need paper," and he will leave you alone. Hey, I know you'll be stuck with no toilet paper, but at least you won't die. At least that's a good trade. The number 6 spot, we have Teke Teke. Teke Teke is a story of a woman named Kashima Raiku who lived in the city of Hokkaido, Japan. One night as she was waiting on the Meishin Expressway, a group of men decided to beat her up and leave her on the floor, barely conscious. With her little strength, Raiku would frantically call out for help, but since it was so late at the night, there was nobody around. After coming to the realization that no one was going to help, she began crawling her way back home. As she was crawling, she noticed that she was on a train track and got struck by an oncoming train. The train ended up severing her body in half. Legend says that she is still crawling with only half of her body, while making the sounds of teke teke. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Kisaragi station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at the Shin Hamamatsu station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in this station only go in one direction. She started getting anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station. But on this train, they were much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front of the car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi station. As she left the train, she was filled with anxiety and fear. But as she tried to go back, the train's door shut on her. She told the other users on the discussion board of the stations, but they had all said that there was no such station located in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone under before. She reported hearing strange sounds like drums in the distance and a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to see an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering for help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died. She was never heard on the thread again. Chilling at our number 4 spot, we have Peko-chan. Peko-chan is the mascot of the Milky Candies, but her story is more sour than sweet. The story goes that Peko-chan was actually based on a young girl who passed away during the 1940s. The legend goes that during World War II, there was a huge food shortage in Japan. Because of this, many people, including women and children, were starving to death. So Peko-chan's mother decided to cut a piece of her own arm off and offered it to Peko to eat. This is the moment Peko-chan discovered how tasty human flesh was. In fact, she had never tasted anything so good in her life. She couldn't resist with such a piece, so she decided to kill her mom and eat her whole body. Ever since, she's been constantly craving human meat, living the rest of her days as a cannibal. At our number 3 spot, we have the Kone Kone. The legend arose in Japan where sightings of a creature are reported in rice fields or in an open sea. This creature resembles a tall white mannequin made of fabric, almost like an inflatable tube, but deadlier. Other than that, no one knows exactly what it looks like because everyone who saw it either went crazy or has died. There's a story where one summer, 2 brothers went to visit their grandparents in the countryside. They were playing outside when they noticed a figure in the distance, wiggling in the wind. But when the wind stopped, the figure kept on wiggling. Curious, the older brother took binoculars to see the figure, but as he did, he stopped breathing and turned blue with sweat running down his whole body. The younger brother asked what he saw, and the older brother responded that it's better not to know. But the voice that came out was not the brother's. Later that day, the older brother was found laughing uncontrollably, wiggling in the fields. All the way at our number 2 spot, we have Honeona. In Japanese mythology, the Honeona, or the Bone Woman, is a spirit whose face, hands, and neck appear to be that of a young, attractive female. However, the rest of her body bears no flesh at all. It's said that she uses her beauty to seduce unsuspecting men, where she would lure them into the dark and isolated areas. Because when they're alone, she reveals her true form and sucks her life force energy, leaving them as a pile of dust. In other accounts, the Honeona are said to be the spirits of a young woman who had died, but cannot move on from their past lovers. To their loved ones, they appear normal, but for everyone else, they appear as the Bone Woman. Taking our number 1 spot in our list, we have the Okiku doll. Let me start this off by saying that this haunted doll is worse than Chucky. This story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Aikaichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono. His sister loved the doll so much that she even named it after her own name. These two would become attached together like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her, her family put up her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days, they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing, and every time it was cut, it would keep on growing until it reached just above the knees, which happened to be the same place where Okiku's hair stopped. At our number 10 spot, we have almost had a war over a tree. 2 US Army officers named Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were axed and butchered until they passed from North Koreans while trying to trim a tree in the DMZ. This would later be known as the Korean Axe Murder Incident. The tree was blocking a checkpoint view, which is why the US decided to chop it in the first place. As you would expect, when the US caught wind that the soldiers passed away in a foreign country, they quickly took action. They created Operation Paul Bunyan, which is named after a mythical lumberjack from North American lore. The operation was very simple. Go to the DMZ and chop it down, except they came with a little few friends of their own. This included hundreds of soldiers armed with machine guns, grenade launchers, and chainsaws. And if that wasn't enough to make this more American, they brought in a 23 vehicle convoy with a tank, 20 utility helicopters, and 7 attack helicopters. Oh, you thought I was done? They also brought in B-52s, F-4s, F-5s, F-111s, and also a carrier which was offshore and a nuclear-capable bomber circulating the area. If you guess that the North Koreans didn't do anything, you are right. At number 9 spot, we have videos of nuclear destruction. Okay, first things first, North Korea has no internet. Well, except for high-level officials and some schools, but that's pretty much it. This means their media spreads like a wildfire in a desert. The only thing that did catch fire is when North Korea featured a video simulation of a nuclear missile striking with what appears to be somewhere in the United States, as you can see the flag burning by the end of the video. This video was unveiled during a military parade marking the 105th birthday of Kim Il-sung. This video caused a lot of controversies, especially when it came at a time when the tensions were super high between the US and the Hermit State. For reference, this was in 2017, and by that time North Korea had done a ton of missile testing, and to make things more worrisome, North Korea test launched a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile into the sea this year. At number 8 spot, we have a betrayal at the death camps. North Korea is known for their cruel punishment and their horrendous living conditions. Put these two together and you have some of the worst death camps in the world. Just to give you a little bit of what happens on the inside, many of the prisoners were kept to the brink of starvation. They are forced to do physical demanding labor for hours, torture, subject to chemical experimentation, and sometimes prisoners would be randomly executed, sometimes because the guard didn't like them. One specific story from the Mirror has Shin Dong-hyuk share his experiences in these death camps. When he was 13 years old, he overheard his mother planning to escape the camp. Since he was practically born on the camp, all he knew was to obey and report anything bad in the eyes of North Korea. So he ratted his mom out. He would then recall watching his mom and his brother being dragged out and publicly executed in front of his very eyes. The worst part about this is that at the time he believed he did good because he claimed this is the type of brainwashing he underwent at the camp. At number 7 spot, we have Otter Warm Beer. Warm Beer was a student from UCLA and decided it was time to go somewhere outside of the box. He then went on a trip to North Korea through a Chinese company called Young Pioneer Tours, which is still one of the biggest tours to this day. In the hotel he was staying at, there was a forbidden floor, but he went there anyway and stole a political poster off the wall. This was all caught on film. This is all because a church in Hawaii that he was a part of wanted him to do it. During his confession speech on February 2016, he said this:
I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself, and of their very fair and square legal procedures in the DPR Korea.
This is a load of barnacles.
Then on March that same year, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. Negotiations happened, but it wasn't until June 2017 when North Korea released Otto. except he was in a coma after taking a sleeping pill. It wasn't until he was flown out to the US where he passed away. After this incident, the US government decided to ban all American tourists from visiting North Korea altogether. Another reason not to visit this place. At number 6 spot, we have North Korean ghost ships. Hundreds of abandoned boats from North Korea wash up on Japanese and Russian coastlines each year. Some of the vessels contain the crew's remains, but they're usually just a pile of bones. These ghost ships are thought to be the result of North Korean fishermen becoming lost at sea and dying from malnutrition or weather exposure. The ships are typically old and lack stronger engines, and I mean, it's from North Korea. They're pretty much still living in the 1980s still. However, after an investigation was done, they found that these boats are actually sent out from China as a way for them to fish illegally in North Korean waters, which violates UN sanctions completely. Right in the hump of our list, we have Ryugyong Hotel. Sorry if I mispronounced that. This 105-star hotel in Pyongyang was completed in 1992, but by that time it didn't function as a hotel at all. The building was hollowless and had no windows, which meant complete darkness on the inside. Kim Jong-un wanted this hotel to be the biggest and best hotel in the world, but it completely fell short from that goal. It still remains empty to this day. It's literally just a large structure just overlooking the city, and it's more scary to think that no one actually goes into that building. And in fact, this is the world's tallest unoccupied building. Now many theorists have claimed this building isn't empty and it harbors something more sinister inside. This may be a stretch, but online communities have mentioned that SCPs and other governmental projects are being kept secret in this building, hence why it will never truly open up to the public. At number 4 spot, we have Room 39. Room 39 is a secretive North Korean organization that figures out ways to get funds for Kim Jong-un. This room is in a ruling workers' party building in Pyongyang. The main goal of this room is basically to make sure that Kim and his family never run out of funds, and most of these ways are through illegal means. Legally, they invest in many different precious metals and currencies and some companies, but illegally, which is where they make most of their money, they allegedly make their money through means of narcotics, human trafficking, and most famous, counterfeiting money. The North Koreans are so good at creating counterfeit US dollars that they created a super note, which is supposedly 1-for-1 of a US $100 bill. Some people in the US have actually been prosecuted for distributing the money that was produced in this very room. This room also serves as a place for arms dealing, where they usually sell to terrorist organizations and dictators for money. At our number 3 spot, we have Kim Jong-il's tomb. His tomb is on this list because it just gives everyone other than North Koreans the utter creeps. The mausoleum contains the embalmed body of North Korea's late leader Kim Jong-il, and it was open to tourists for some time. During that time, you could see the leader in this glass box with his body resting inside. Just a creepy sight to see in general, let alone a dictator who causes people to suffer. At number 2 spot, we have the Shincheon massacre. Now before I get started with this one is all up for speculation. North Korea has said this happened while the US has said it was falsified, but forget about what we care about, let's just care about the North Korean side right now. They claim that a mass murder took place in the 1950s during the Korean War. In the town of Shincheon, American soldiers supposedly took the lives of over 35,000 civilians in the course of 52 days. If this was true, this would make it one of the most deadliest massacres in history, but that's if. Now this event is memorialized in the Shincheon Museum of American War Atrocities. Yup, there's a museum on horrible violent acts, and some of the paintings in here are pretty disturbing. At our number 1 spot, we have an election. This one is probably the least scariest on this list, but the fact that people have no right to vote for their leaders is definitely terrifying for me at least. Voting in North Korea is actually a thing. When you're supposed to go in for voting, many people show up super early to show a sign of loyalty. But when they're there to vote, it's just mandatory to vote for the SPA party, otherwise known as the Supreme People's Assembly. There's also supposedly private voting booths, but seriously, what do you have to hide? If you do attempt to vote for someone else, the police will follow you and find any ways to incriminate you or declare you insane. At a number 10 spot, we have the Chong-ek Genocidal Center. As the name suggests, this was a pure massacre and a horrible tragedy in Cambodia's long rich history. In the area around this genocidal center, approximately 17,000 people lost their lives and were buried, many whom were bound and blindfolded. For obvious reasons, these were known as the execution fields of Chong-ek. This is all but a reminder of some of the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge regime, who were known for their forced labor camps and malnourished citizens. Now back to the Chong-ek Genocidal Center. This is where the regime would take their prisoners to be executed and now serves as a memorial for this mass grave. The center even features a Buddhist stupa filled with different human skulls retrieved from the field, ranging from the elderly to some babies. Now many feel uncomfortable walking these grounds and sense the presence of those who are suffering there. Many others claim to see the apparition of Pol Pot, who is the leader of this devastating regime. But regardless, knowledge is power, and hopefully this educates us to never go down this route again.
Number 9, haunted house on National Road. According to some, this is the most haunted place in Cambodia. There are many stories that describe it as a very mysterious island where a lot of people have either passed away or disappeared without a trace. Now on National Road number 5, from Kampong Chang province to Prasat province in Cambodia. Just 5 minutes driving from Stung Bribo Bridge, on the right-hand side, there's a house that most people stop by to pay their respect to a famous ghost house. There's a very large monument built because a family that didn't particularly want to live created a curse. The curse took residents in a pit they threw themselves in to take their lives. Eventually, people who drove near it started to pass away. It was also said that the residents who lived nearby started to pass away around World War II. At the time, it was a wooden house, but now it's concrete.
At number 8 spot, we have Boker Hill Station. Boker Hill Station once served as a French settlement town and a hideout for the Khmer Rouge regime. Remember that terrible communist party I mentioned earlier? Through its time, many lives were claimed due to the hard labor needed to build all this infrastructure. This town even saw a war with the invasion of Vietnam. This regime used this place as one of their last strongholds, so many lives were lost defending it. Now it lies completely abandoned with only the rundown buildings to show for it. Fortunately, the place opened up for tourism, but many people report feeling sadness walking along these blood-stained grounds. Many people visit the old hotel in the town and they claim to see the apparitions in the corner of the rooms, standing there just watching them. Didn't think it was scary yet? Imagine this place at night. Boom, terrifying.
Now at number 7, Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. In the 1970s, this former high school was converted into the notorious S21 prison by the Khmer regime, where an estimated 20,000 prisoners were executed. Souls of the victims who were detained, starved, tortured, and executed are said to be roaming the S21 hall. Many unusual incidences have been reported there, including the guards who hear moaning and chains rattling at night. Today, the school or prison has been transformed into a museum where the ghosts of the deceased are still said to haunt the halls. Of the 20,000 prisoners that experienced the horror of S21, only approximately 6 to 12 are rumored to have survived the genocide. The museum employees even leave food out for the ghosts during their lunch breaks. They say that if they don't leave an offering, they can't enjoy their own lunches in peace due to loud noises and other ghostly activities.
At number 6 spot, we have the Independence Hotel. This hotel in Sihanoukville, Cambodia is thought to be haunted by one of its former residents. The wealthy and the famous quickly filled the rooms of the hotel after its 1964 construction. After a few years of prosperity, the hotel closed its doors in the mid-1970s to become a base for the Khmer Rouge soldiers. We can't escape this regime, can we? Rumors claim that the hotel conducted mass killings while using the swimming pool to house prisoners. It was abandoned and allowed to deteriorate before being restored in 1982 and serving as a hangout for UNTAC troops in the early 1990s. It was then shut down in 1999 and had a significant renovation and reopened to visitors in 2007. Despite the reopening, the new paint couldn't mask the atrocities done within the hotel. Guests would report cold spots in the rooms, and others would report an infamous spirit of a young girl who took her own life in one of the rooms, or even the aggressive spirits of the 4 robbers who were reportedly shot down in the mid-90s at the hotel. Think you can do a day at this hotel? Cause I can't.
Halfway, number 5, Banana Ghost Tree. The story goes that a husband was sent abroad for business, and while away, the wife got sick and passed away. Her spirit became vengeful and started haunting the people of their village. When the husband returned, not knowing about his wife's passing, he quickly realized that the woman he found was not his wife, but her ghost when she unnaturally made her arm longer. He ran away from their house seeking help, but even after a proper burial, his deceased wife followed him to a Buddhist monk's house where he sought safety. As he was reciting prayers with closed eyes, his wife's ghost climbed one of the many banana trees near the monk's house, entered through a window, and immediately took the life of the man. A belief which many people still follow stems from this legend forbidding people from planting banana trees next to their houses, as her ghost spirit could enter through the house by climbing in on a banana leaf. If there was already a banana tree growing close by, all of the banana tree's leaves touching or near the house would usually be cut off for safety.
At a number 4 spot, we have Kokor. Kokor is an island approximately 20 kilometers outside of the capital city of Cambodia. This place is a complete tropical paradise, but as they say, beauty is often deceiving. Turns out this island is nicknamed Murder Island, and they got this name because, you guessed it, the Khmer Rouge regime was here, and they established a prison where they would use it as an execution site. This prison was estimated to have claimed the lives of thousands of people due to physical abuse and malnourishment. This is why many residents of the island claim to see the ghosts of the former prisoners wearing their black shirts and crying out for help in the middle of the night. They even left a brutal display of the remains of those who lost their life on this island. Don't know about you, but I'm still hung up on the fact that it's called Murder Island. Shouldn't this be a no-brainer for all of you guys as well?
Now at number 3, Champa Pagoda. During the broadcasting of a horrific night, a local radio programmee served as a channel for Cambodian people who would call in and share their paranormal experiences. Noah Vaseth, a government official residing in Stung Treng and a dedicated listener who tuned in on the show every Saturday and Sunday, said his life was almost taken by the ghosts while traveling along the road in front of Champa Pagoda in the Vey district. His story was this: it was 10 p.m. and I was on my way home from work. Suddenly, a bike ran into me. I avoided it and fell over, and then the bike just disappeared into thin air. This is not the first story of its kind to have been reported. Many claim that they have experienced similar incidences while traveling in the area, which is well known for being a place where hundreds of people passed from traffic accidents.
At number 2 spot, we have the Kampong Cham Ghost House. In 2005, the movie The Haunted House was filmed in this house. Before the shooting, all the actors prayed and made a super ceremony to pay respect to the spirit inside the house. According to rumors, a young couple moved to this newly built house. They dreamed that someone offered to buy a house for $3,000 in net gold. They immediately agreed, and the next morning, they woke up and they saw the gold was placed at the door of the house. But they did not move despite taking the gold. One day after waking up, they found themselves lying on the wilderness with their belongings. Since then, no one has dared to step into the house, and it supposedly doesn't have a speck of dust inside of it to this day.
Now coming in at number 1, Old Shingji Hospital. The now abandoned hospital was built in 1935 by the British colonial government as part of a military base camp in the area. It included 2 military buildings, blocks 24 and 37, that were part of the Kitchener Barracks, which housed the Royal Engineers of the British Army. However, the hospital's peak was short-lived, with the grounds being seized by Japanese troops in 1942 and used as a holding ground for prisoners of war. During the occupation, the hospital was said to have been used as a torture facility by the Japanese secret police, based on the fact that there were rooms with thick chains hanging from the walls and blood-stained floors. Before and after its closure in 1997, visitors and hospital guards claimed to have seen phantoms resembling nurses and soldiers roaming its corridors, as well as hearing unexplainable hellish shrieks. A movie was even filmed on the site, and the crew reported strange occurrences with unexplainable sounds, disembodied voices, and sightings of ghostly figures.
Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have Radiation Man. This is the story of a man who was kept alive for 83 days just so doctors could see the effects of radiation and how long a human could last. In 1999, 3 technicians at a nuclear power plant in Japan were involved in a catastrophic accident that left one of them, Hisashi Uchi, with the highest dose of radiation any human has ever experienced. Uchi, along with Masato Shinohara and Yutaka Yakokoa, were working at a plant when a nuclear reaction occurred, emitting neutron radiation and gamma rays all over the place. As a result, Uchi received a devastating 17 sieverts of radiation, while Shinohara and Yokokawa received fatal doses of 10 and 3 sieverts respectively. The effects of radiation on Uchi were immediate and severe, causing burns and completely damaging his internal organs and immune system. Despite being treated by a team of top medical professionals from around the world, Uchi's condition continued to deteriorate. He underwent numerous skin transplants and was kept alive through the use of blood and fluids, including drugs and life support. Tragically, on the 59th day of treatment, Uchi's heart stopped 3 times in just 49 minutes, causing severe damage to his brain and his kidneys. He eventually passed away on December 21st, 1999 due to multi-organ failure, spending the final 83 days of his life in intense pain and suffering. At a number 9 spot, we have the Unit 731. Yup, this story is terrible. Unit 731 was a Japanese biological warfare research unit that operated in China during World War II. It was headquartered in a facility in the Pingfan district, located in China, and they conducted experiments on human subjects in order to test the effectiveness on biological weapons and even study the effects of various diseases. The unit was established in 1936 and operated until the end of the war in 1945. It was led by Shiro Ishii, a Japanese army doctor, and was composed of several hundred scientists and medical professionals. The unit conducted a wide range of experiments on human subjects, including prisoners of war and civilians, often without their consent or even their knowledge. Some of the experiments conducted by Unit 731 included infecting subjects with diseases such as the bubonic plague, cholera, and typhoid fever. They would also study the effects of frostbite by deliberately exposing subjects to extreme cold and performing surgeries on live subjects without any sort of anesthesia. As a result, many of the subjects died in these experiments, and the unit is believed to have killed thousands of people during its operation. After the war, many of the members of Unit 731 were granted immunity from prosecution in an exchange for sharing the data they had collected with the United States. This decision has been heavily criticized, obviously, as it allowed the perpetrators of these atrocities to evade accountability for their actions. However, in more recent years, the Chinese government did call for Japan to take responsibility for this Unit 731 and to provide compensation to the victims and their families. The Chinese government was also called for the unit's activities to be recognized as war crimes and for the perpetrators to be held accountable once and for all. At a number 8 spot, we have the elevator man. Apparently some time ago in a towering skyscraper located in Korea, there was a young woman named Karuko. She was a very bright 19-year-old student who lived in the 14th floor of her building, but on one fateful night, she had an experience in an elevator that would change her life. As the elevators began to close, a handsome stranger managed to slip his hand in order to stop them. The man stepped inside of the elevator and stood very close to Karuko. This is when the two began to flirt and engage in very small talk. The stranger told her he lived on the 13th floor, just one floor below her. As the elevator approached the 13th floor and the man walked out, the man suddenly turned around, turned to Karuko and said, "I'll see you upstairs." He then pulled out a knife as he left, he laughed and then disappeared towards the staircase. The doors of the elevator then shut, leaving Karuko alone and afraid. As the elevator continued to climb to the 14th floor, Karuko frantically pressed every button trying to get it to stop. But it was all in vain. The elevator doors finally opened up on the 14th floor, and to Karuko's terror, she found the man waiting for her. She was tragically slain before she could even scream for help, and since then, many have claimed this is a true story, and it's said to be the explanation why elevators now have this stop button. Some even say that the man who killed Karuko still roams the halls of this building, trying to lure innocent people into the elevator with him. And also there is a game I mentioned in a lot of my past videos which include this story, and this is basically the origin story to that. So if you ever want to know more, just search up the elevator game online and you can even play this yourself. At a number 7 spot, we have the P-40 ghost plane. In 1942, American radar detected a strange aircraft approaching their territory from Japan. Although it appeared to be an airplane, it did not have the typical markings of an aerial attack. The American military dispatched 2 pilots to intercept the mysterious plane. As they approached it, they discovered that the aircraft was a P-40, and they were surprised to find that it bore markings that had not been used since the Pearl Harbor attack. Additionally, they observed that the plane was in very poor condition, with bullet holes riddling the fuselage and the landing gear completely blown away. The pilots were amazed that the plane was even able to fly in the first place. However, they were shocked to find the pilot slumped in the cockpit, wearing a flight suit stained with fresh blood. When the pilots looked through the window, the pilot raised his hand slightly and turned toward them, offering a meek wave. Shortly thereafter, the plane crashed to the ground with a deafening roar. American troops arrived at the crash site but found no evidence of the pilot or any identifying markings from the plane. Researchers later found a diary at the crash site that helped them to determine that the plane must have come from Mindanao, which was an island 1,000 miles away. The rest of the story still remains a complete mystery. Some have speculated that the plane may have been downed over a year earlier and the pilot managed to survive on his own in the wild. He could have scavenged parts from other downed aircraft, repaired his airplane, and then navigated his way back to the homeland through hostile territory. However, the mystery remains as to how heavy the P-40 aircraft could have taken off without any sort of landing gear. Japanese records confirm that an American P-40 flew over Formosa on December 8th, 1942, but where it came, where it was headed, and how it even got airborne still remains a mystery. At a number 6 spot with the Maria Labo. Maria Labo was a woman from the province of Capiz in the Philippines who had a happy family consisting of a loving husband and 1 son. However, she decided to work abroad in England for the sake of her family's financial stability. Maria was lucky enough to have a good employer who treated her well, but she didn't know that her employer was a vampire, supposedly. It was said that Maria was a combination of a maid and a caregiver to this vampire employer, who would always provide her with half-cooked liver to eat. After a few months of working for him, Maria started to feel sick. Little did she know that she has ingested some of her employer's blood, which caused her this unknown illness. Eventually, Maria decided to return home to the Philippines to live with her family. Upon returning home, Maria's husband, who was a police officer, was very surprised to see her. She had already prepared dinner, but when her husband asked where their son was, Maria just replied, "Our son is right there." Her husband was confused, and it wasn't until he opened the refrigerator that he realized the horrific truth. The meat he had eaten that day was their own son. In a fit of rage, Maria's husband picked up a large knife and slashed her face, leaving a large scar, which is why she was called Maria Labo. Labo means scar in Filipino. From that day on, Maria went on a murderous rampage and stalked or hunted in many different locations within the Philippines. However, her husband continued to hunt for Maria because he just wanted to kill her and end all all of this. It is also said that whenever Maria was known to be in any place within the Philippines, people would try to find and kill her in order to save her own children. So there would be this large hunt out for her and it would just be crazy. In the hub of our list, we have the Hello Kitty murders. Our story begins in May 1999 when a 13-year-old girl approached the Hong Kong police, claiming that a woman whom her boyfriend had helped to kill was haunting her. The police was initially skeptical, but when the girl described how a 23-year-old woman was brutally tortured and bound with electrical wire in a third-floor flat on Granville Road 31, they knew they had to investigate. As they searched the apartment, they uncovered some truly horrifying evidence: a large Hello Kitty doll that had been stuffed with a woman's head. The victim of this ghastly crime was Fan Man Yi, a 23-year-old nightclub hostess who has been abducted for over a year, allegedly for failing to repay a $20,000 debt. According to the various media reports, Fan was held captive for over a month, during which time she was subjected to brutal torture on a daily basis until she eventually succumbed to her injuries. The men responsible for her death then chopped up the body into tiny pieces and disposed of it with the garbage. Some versions of the story claim that they even skinned her and boiled her. Although this is difficult to confirm, what is even more terrifying is that her severed head was sewn inside of a Hello Kitty doll, which became the bizarre story for this tragic accident, the Hello Kitty murder. When the news of this gruesome murder hit the press, it horrified residents of Hong Kong and sparked a media frenzy that lasted for months. As if the story couldn't get any more chilling, there was even reports of a shadowy female figure lurking near the apartment building where this happened, and it was captured on various CCTV cameras from nearby buildings. At our number 4 spot, we have the Tugu complex. In the city of Malang are 3 schools who are in deep connection with the horrors committed in World War II. Back in the 1940s, these 3 schools were used as concentration camps by the opposing Japanese soldiers. The Japanese created an underground system of crawl spaces and secret rooms that connected each school along with the local train station and governor's office. This would ensure accessibility everywhere. Legend says that 2 teenagers attempted to explore these tunnels and secret passageways, but after a short time, one student came out screaming while the other one was found weeks later in the train station in a trance-like state and unable to speak about the horrors he saw. Many believe it was the ghost of those who lost their lives there in World War II. Another occurrence is the bloodstains on the floor tiles in each of these buildings. And the odd thing is that workers say that removing these stains are nearly impossible, and some would even fall ill after completing the cleanup job, which is why they have stopped doing it completely. At a number 3 spot, we have the Orang Minyak. The Orang Minyak, or the oily man, is a creature that takes the shape of a man that is covered in a thick, murky black oil. It comes at the darkest time of night when it's almost impossible to see. It snatches young women in rural villages when they're sleeping, and this is why many people fear oil spills in the country, oddly enough. It can shapeshift into oil to slip through cracks in the walls and the floors, so there's basically no place to hide from the Orang Minyak. In Malaysia's past, young women were told to wear clothing that was worn by a man so that this creature couldn't catch their scent. Keeping a mirror nearby, it was also a must because this creature doesn't like to see their own reflection. This became such a big urban legend that some girls would cover their rooms in all mirrors, but in my opinion, that is just as creepy as this creature. Number 2, the Karak Highway. This Malaysian highway is said to be the world's most haunted highway. It is a 70-kilometer long interstate highway that connects Kuala Lumpur to the Genting Highlands. The amount of paranormal reports from this highway alone is enough to make someone take a way longer detour instead. The first of these incidents happened when a couple and their baby were returning one night from vacation. The car then suddenly broke down on the side of the road, and as he looked for someone to help, he notices the highway was completely empty. So he walks up to the closest nearby phone booth to call for help, but the man never ended up returning. After a few hours of waiting, his wife calls the police, but when they arrive, they tell her to not step out of the vehicle and to not look behind them. After walking a distance away, she turns around to see her husband's headless body being devoured by a banshee-like creature on top of their car. Also on Karak Highway, if you find yourself stuck behind a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, just get away from it. This vehicle is known to stalk drivers and even cause them to get into fatal accidents. So be extra careful if you guys decide to drive near this area in Malaysia. At a number 1 spot, we have the Mongolian deathworm. The Gobi Desert, located between Mongolia and China, is said to have a Mongolian deathworm, otherwise known as an intestine worm, due to its appearance of being fleshy and red in color. This 2 to 7 foot long creature has the ability to spit out venomous liquid out of its mouth, and if you ever get close enough to touch the creature, it is believed that the entire body is covered in a sticky, poisonous substance that will kill you on touch. And if that wasn't enough, it can even electrify you the same way an eel can. while movies on the creature depict it as being this large, colossal being, it's actually believed to be a lot smaller at around 7 feet. Regardless, the fact that this creature can hide anywhere in the desert sands and come out with basically no weaknesses makes it one of the most dangerous and scariest ones on this list. Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the elevator game. The elevator game is a mysterious and potentially dangerous ritual that is said to bring you to another world. This game has its origins in Japan and is played by entering an elevator in a public building with at least 10 floors. The player must press specific buttons in a specific order without anyone entering or even leaving the elevator in order to reach this other world. In the other world, electronics do not work, the lights are off, and all that can be seen from the windows is a red cross in the distance. To return back to the original world, the players must repeat the sequence of button presses and be very vigilant of their surroundings. The player must be careful not to look at the woman who enters the elevator on the 5th floor, as she is not human. If someone enters or even leaves the elevator during the ritual, the players must start over. And you must be wondering what the specific ritual is, but if you guys actually want to know about that, search it up, because I'm not going to say it for you guys because I don't want you guys doing this. Because for those who have played, it is said that if they faint or lose consciousness during the ritual, they may wake up in their own home. But they must be careful to examine their surroundings, as it may not be the same home they left. It is important to not attempt this ritual too many times as well, as it can lead to an accidental slipping between both worlds. And it's also worth mentioning that if the woman does not enter the elevator or the players do not reach the 10th floor, they should immediately return to the 1st floor and completely end the game. At a number 9 spot, we have the Rokurokubi, the long-necked demon. The legend of the Rokurokubi is a supernatural creature from Japanese mythology that originated during the Edo period, which is 1603 to 1867. The Rokurokubi is a beautiful woman by day, but at night she undergoes a metamorphosis where her neck extends and she begins to hunt. Some versions of this legend says that this creature can be recognized by small white marks on their neck, or even by the way they sleep with their head far from their body. But in reality, when I see photos of this, all I can think is, if they got a long neck, they're probably this creature. According to folklore, however, there are different explanations for the origin of this creature. Some believe they were once Buddhists who broke the religion's principles and were then cursed as punishment, while other people see the transformation as a supernatural expression of the person's desires. There are also legends that suggest they are Oni, which are these Japanese demons seeking revenge or even simply just playing tricks on humans. And it's also worth mentioning that this creature comes in many different forms, with female ones attacking men and male ones attacking women. The Nukekubi is one of the most dangerous forms, however, known for its detached head that just flies around and attacks its prey. At a number 8 spot, we have Hitobashira. Hitobashira, also known as human pillars, is a custom of human sacrifice that was once practiced in Japan. It involved burying a victim alive under or near large-scale buildings such as dams, bridges, and castles. The practice was believed to appease the gods and protect the structure from natural disasters and enemy attacks. The tradition of human sacrifice in Japan dates back to the construction of aristocratic tombs in ancient times. The use of human pillars persisted in various parts of Japan until the 16th century. Legend has it that the Maruoka Castle, one of the oldest surviving castles in Japan, was built with the help of a human pillar named Oshizu. When the stone wall of the castle kept collapsing, a vassal suggested the use of a human sacrifice, Oshizu, who is this one-eyed woman living in poverty who volunteered to even become this human pillar in the first place. But she did this under one condition, and that one condition being that one of her sons was turned into a samurai. She was buried under the central pillar of the castle keep, and the construction was successfully completed. However, her son was not made a samurai, and thus her spirit has caused moat to overflow with spring rain every single year, and some people even report to see her ghost when they enter and visit this castle. As a result, people erected a small tomb to soothe her spirit, and a poem was even handed down about the rain caused by the tears of Oshizu's sorrow. It is speculated that the instability of the walls of the Maruoka Castle was due to the design of the castle in the first place, which is more indicative of earlier fortresses. On the other hand, the Matsu Castle is also rumored to have been constructed on human sacrifice, buried under the castle stone walls. The victim was a beautiful young maiden who was fond of dancing and is referred to as the Maiden of the Matsu. After the castle was built, a law was passed forbidding any girl to dance in the streets of Matsu because the hill Oshiruyama would shudder and the castle would shake from top to bottom. Although this practice has not been continued, it's just crazy to think that this was actually done, and some of the pillars in Japan actually contain real human sacrifice. At our number 7 spot, we have the Kisaragi Station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at Shin Hamatsu Station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in the station only go in one direction. She started getting really anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station, but on this specific train ride, they were just much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi Station. As she left the train, she was filled with huge anxiety and fear, but as she tried to go back, the train door shut on her. As all this was happening, she was messaging people on this discussion board on 4chan about the station, but when they all replied, they had said that no such station existed in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone through under earlier. She reported strange sounds like drums in the distance, and even a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is extremely dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to go around, but she saw an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the very last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died, and she was never heard from the thread again. At our number 6 spot, we have the 1932 Shirokiya department store. On December 16, 1932, tragedy struck the Shirokiya department store in Japan during their year-end Christmas theme sale. The festive decorations of the season turned into a nightmare as a fire broke out at the toy section just a few minutes before the store was about to open. The fire quickly spread to floors 4 and 8, filling the staircase with smoke and cutting off major escape routes. This left many shoppers and employees stranded on the upper floors, desperate for a way to find safety. Some of those who were trapped made makeshift ropes from clothing or curtains and climbed down to safety. Others were not so lucky. They instead fell to their deaths or even suffocated in the smoke-filled building. In total, 14 people lost their lives and 67 were injured in the Shirokiya department store fire. In the aftermath of the fire, stories and legends began to circulate about the tragedy. One particularly interesting legend relates to the traditional dress of the saleswoman in the store. At the time, it was customary for women who wore traditional kimonos to go without panties. According to this urban legend, some of the saleswomen in kimonos who were trapped on the upper floors chose not to jump the safety nets that had been set up below because they were just ashamed to not be seen below without underwear. While there is no real proof that this legend actually existed, it is said to have led on to an increase in the popularity of Western style panties in Japan, which is both odd and kind of terrifying at the same time. I don't know what to think. In the hub for our list, we have the ghost taxi passengers. After the devastating 3/11 earthquake and tsunami that hit the northeastern Japan coast, sightings of yurei or ghosts have increased drastically in cities like Ishinomaki in Miyagi Prefecture. As these spirits have not been properly put to rest, some may have not even been aware that they are dead and are often searching for a way home. As a result, taxi drivers all over this place have long been subject to ghostly encounters in the form of passengers trying to go home or to a very specific place. This has almost become a norm for taxi drivers around Japan to be asked if they had ever had a ghostly passenger before. Tohoku Gaon University conducted a study called the Awakened Spiritual Earthquake Studies that involve interviews with more than 100 Ishinomaki taxi drivers who had supernatural encounters. Many drivers reported picking up passengers who seemed to be wet or wearing winter coats in the summer, months after the disaster in the cold months of March. Most drivers reported running the meter and having to pay the fee for the vanished passenger. One particular driver reported a chilling story about a man in winter clothing whom he picked up in the summer who asked to be taken to an address that had been destroyed. The driver asked if he was sure that that was the address as it was just a vacant lot, to which the passenger replied by asking, "Am I dead?" Number 4, the Red Room Curse. The Red Room Curse is a Japanese urban legend that originated from an interactive Adobe Flash horror animation uploaded to GeoCities in the late 1990s. The legend tells the story of a pop-up ad that appears on the victim's computer screen, displaying a black text that reads, "Do you like?" on a red background. After trying to close the pop-up, it reappears with a new message that reads, "Do you like the Red Room?" before the screen just turns completely red, displaying a list of names of the Red Room victims. This is when the victim senses a mysterious presence behind them before losing consciousness and later being found dead in a room with blood-painted walls. The legend gained notoriety in 2004 when a 12-year-old schoolgirl was murdered by an 11-year-old classmate known as Girl A in Sasebo. It was reported that Girl A was a fan of the Red Room curse animation and had the video bookmarked on her computer at the time of her death. And of course, this incident led to widespread discussion and fear for this curse. Then in 2016, a short film titled The Red Room Curse was released and was inspired by this urban legend, of course. The film brings the legend to life and is sure to give anyone who watches it a chilling experience. So if you guys kind of want to know what this Red Room is about, watch this film because it'll give you all the insights. Number 3, the Ushi-Oni. The world of Japanese mythology is full of terrifying creatures, but none are quite as fearsome as the Ushi-Oni, also known as the Ox Demon. This class of monster is found near bodies of water and is known for its savage and cruel nature. Although there are different types of Ushi-Oni, they all share similar traits that make them unmistakable. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about these monsters is their insatiable appetite for human flesh. Then on top of that, they breathe toxic poison, making them even more deadly. The Ushi-Oni is not to be trifled with as well, and many people who have encountered one have not lived to tell the tale. It is worth mentioning that the Ushi-Oni is not always a solitary creature either. They are known to work together with other yokai or supernatural creatures such as the Nura-Onna and the Iso-Onna. These yokai use their charms to lure unsuspecting men towards the water, where the Ushi-Oni is waiting to pounce and make a meal of its victims. The appearance of the Ushi-Oni is quite unique and interesting as well. Much of them resemble an ox from the head up, but their body is a demonic horror. However, there are many variations on this theme, including one with a spider-like body, another one with a cat-like body, and even one with the body of a kimono-clad human. Pretty terrifying. Number 2, the cursed Kleenex commercial. In 1986, Kleenex released a commercial in Japan that sparked a series of disturbing urban legends. The ad featured a woman in white and an ogre-looking child sitting on a pile of hay and enjoying Kleenex tissues, all while singing the song "It's a Fine Day" by Jane and Barden played in the background. Almost instantly after the commercial was aired, TV stations and Kleenex corporate allegedly began receiving complaints about the ad, with many people finding unsettling. Some claim that the entire film crew met untimely deaths in freak accidents following this, while others said that the child in the commercial had passed away immediately after filming this. There are also rumors that the actress Kaiko Matsuzaka had either passed away or even been committed to a psychiatric hospital. Others claim that when the ad came on at night, the singer's voice in the commercial transformed from that of a young soprano to a raspy old woman's. And the ad was so unsettling to the public that Kleenex eventually pulled it off air and replaced it with a completely different one. At our number 1 spot, we have the Kaikoji Temple. This place has nothing really scary about it, except the fact that it has mummified bodies on display. Okay, maybe it's a bit scary. These mummified figures are known as the Shukumbutsu, also known as the living Buddha or Buddha mummies. These are in fact real people, and these are the bodies of the priests who belong to the Shingon sect of Japanese Buddhism. All of these mummies we see are priests who made the drastic decision in self-mummification. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about a body that being fully intact for hundreds of years that makes it so creepy. The process for the mummification would actually be very intense as well, and for the first 1,000 days, and it would go a little something like this. For the first 1,000 days, they would do extreme fasting and exercising. Then on the next 1,000 days, they would reduce their diet to a bare minimum in order to fit in this thing. The last 1,000 days would consist of entombment. Basically, many would bury themselves alive, essentially while in a deep state of meditation in order to reach enlightenment. Number 10, the cursed Kleenex commercial. In 1986, Kleenex released a commercial in Japan that has sparked a series of disturbing urban legends. The ad featured a woman in white and an ogre-looking child sitting on a pile of hay and enjoying Kleenex tissues while the song "It's a Fine Day" by Jane and Barden played in the background. While almost instantly after the commercial was aired, TV stations and Kleenex corporate allegedly began receiving complaints about the ad, which many found very unsettling. Some people claim that the entire film crew met untimely deaths in freak accidents following this, while others said that the child in the commercial had passed away immediately after filming. There are also rumors that the actress Kaiku Matsuzaka had either passed away or been committed to a psychiatric hospital or even became pregnant with a demon baby following the commercial. Others claim that when the ad came on at night, the singer's voice in the commercial transformed from that of a young soprano to a raspy old woman's, and the ad became so unsettling to the public that clinics eventually pulled it and replaced it with a different one. However, after doing further research, Kaiku Matsuzaka, the girl in the video, is alive and well, and besides that, it's not that bad of an ad. Or at least I think that. At a number 9 spot, we have the Sony timer. The Sony timer, also known as the Sony kill switch, is a rumored feature that is said to exist in electronic devices produced by Sony. The feature was that Sony devices were equipped with a timer that causes the product to stop functioning after a predetermined period of time, forcing you to purchase a replacement. Considering the stuff we know about the Apple updates slowing your phone down, this is really not a surprise now. Anyways, the legend of the Sony timer originated in Japan in the 1980s and early 1990s, and despite the lack of concrete evidence to support the myth, a significant portion of the Japanese population believed in it. The legend remained confined in Japan until 2006, when a recall of over 4 million Dell laptops equipped with defective Sony lithium batteries rekindled the legend of the Sony timer. And despite Sony's efforts to contain the rumor, it eventually came to the knowledge of consumers outside of Japan and had a negative impact on the sales of Sony Vaio laptop computers. Then more recently in 2021, the legend resurfaced once again when an anti-cheat measure in the PlayStation Network had the potential to render games unplayable on certain PlayStation consoles. But much of this is still speculation, and such a thing is not confirmed whether or not it truly existed, but we really know that they try to make our devices bad, so they want us to buy a replacement. We all know that. At a number 8 spot, we have the Alice killings. The Alice killings remain one of the most mysterious and unsolved serial killings in Japanese history. From 1999 to 2005, 5 killings took place, each with a calling card left at the scene by the killer. More specifically, a playing card with the word Alice would be written on it on the victim's blood. The victims were diverse, ranging from a restaurant owner to a high school student to a college student to a nurse. However, they all shared the eerie and gruesome playing card left at the scene of their murders. The first victim, Sasaki Megumi, was a 29-year-old restaurant owner known for her strong personality and excellent cooking. She was last seen alive walking home from a party, and the next morning her body was found in the woods, torn apart and impaled on tree branches, with the Jack of Spades card found in her mouth. The second victim, Yamane Akio, was a singer whose body was found in a bar, his vocal cords ripped out and a gunshot wound to the head. The King of Diamonds card was found in his hands. The third victim, Kai Sakura, was a high school student whose body was found in a shallow grave, mutilated and with a crown sewn onto her head. The Queen of Clubs card was found on a stick marking the grave. The fourth victim, Hasegawa Hiroki, was a college student whose body was found with the Ace of Spades card. The fifth and final victim, Takahashi Ayumi, was a nurse whose body was found with the Joker card. After doing further research, fortunately this person never existed in Japan, but in reality there was a serial killer who was caught that was using playing cards, except it was in Spain, not Japan. They were caught in 2003 and sentenced to 142 years in prison, and not to worry, they do not have a pack of playing cards with them, nor will I think they will ever be allowed to play with cards ever again. Number 7, the Howling Inuwaki Tunnel. The legend of the Inuwaki Tunnel and the village has been a source of fascination in Japan for decades. Located in the remote mountains of the Fukuoka prefecture, the tunnel is said to be haunted by the ghosts of those who went missing inside of it, and is only accessible through an abandoned village called the Inuwaki village. According to the legend, all who enter the village are doomed to a violent death, and the Japanese constitution does not apply there. The legend of the Inuwaki Tunnel and village may have been inspired by a real-life murder that took place in the tunnel in 1988. According to the story, a group of teens kidnapped, robbed, and tortured a young man before burning him alive in the tunnel. The tunnel, being remote and rarely used by traffic, was a popular spot for gangs, and the brutal murder likely contributed to the creation of the legend in the first place. Today, the tunnel is considered one of the most haunted places in Japan, with large concrete bricks blocking its entrance, but that hasn't stopped adventurers from trying to enter it. Locals say that electronic devices and even their cars often break down when they're around this tunnel, and that others sometimes hear the sounds of barking dogs and ghostly screams emanating from deep inside of the tunnel. tunnel. The legend has inspired numerous films and books and other sorts of media, including the 2020 film Howling Village from Ju-on creator Takashi Shimizu. Number 6. The Yaomaoba. Ever wanted to take a hike in the mountains of Japan? Well, just be on the lookout for the Yaomaoba, also known as the Mountain Witch, who supposedly resides in these elevated regions of the country. Yaomaoba is often depicted as an old woman with long unkept hair and a wild experience who lives in the mountains and is associated with the spirit world. According to the stories, this creature is a benevolent figure who helps lost travelers find their way home, while in other stories, she is portrayed as a malevolent being who lures people into the mountains and causes them to go missing. Some locals claim that she was once a regular girl who ran into the mountains to escape false accusations. Here she grew angry and resentful and would eventually have cannibalistic tendencies along with practicing black magic. So on your next hike, don't be deceived by anyone you might come across, because the amount of encounters with this creature leads me to believe that she is really up there in the mountains of Japan. Number 5. Kagome Kagome. Kagome Kagome is a Japanese children's game, and in the game, a group of children joins hands and walks around in circles around a child who is chosen to be the Oni, or demon. The Oni sits in the center of the circle with their eyes covered while the other children sing the Kagome Kagome song. When the song is over, the Oni has to guess the name of the person standing directly behind them. This game takes a sinister twist when a group of people found themselves caught in the game on a foggy suspension bridge. In this case, the group was split into 2 cars, with the first car carrying 3 people and the second car carrying 4 people. So when they reach the bridge, it is already getting dark and the fog is not helping. The first car comes to a halt and the couple gets out, joining hands. They then climb over the railing of the bridge and throw themselves off, much to the shock and horror of the other passengers. One of the other people in the car is found talking to themselves, repeatedly muttering the quote, "mustn't go." The couple is later found dead and is ruled to have both taken their lives. When they ask the remaining survivors of the first car what happened, they say that a girl wearing kimono suddenly appeared in front of their car, causing them to stop. This is when they said that their car was encircled by a group of children who then began saying Kagome Kagome. The children were enticing the passengers to join hands with them, and the couple eventually gave in, while the manager was protected by religiously repeating the phrase, "mustn't go." Number 4. The Red Room Curse. The Red Room Curse is a legend that has long circulated on the internet in Japan, with various versions of the story being told. At its core, the legend involves a mysterious pop-up ad that appears on a person's computer, announcing their impending death. According to the most common version of the legend, while browsing the internet, the victim will be presented with a pop-up featuring a black text on a red background that says, "Do you like blank?" When the victim tries to close the pop-up, it reappears with the text changed to "Do you like the red room?" and the screen turns red, displaying a list of names of the red room's victims. After seeing the pop-up, the victim will sense a mysterious presence behind them and then lose consciousness. They will later be found dead in their home, with the walls of the room in which they are discovered painted red with blood. The origins of the legend can be traced back to a Japanese interactive horror animation that was uploaded to GeoCities in the late 1990s. However, the legend gained notoriety in 2004 due to the Sasebo slashing, a murder case involving a young girl who was a fan of the animation and had the video bookmarked on her computer at the time of the murder. So there is some truth to this. But what do you guys think about the curse? Real or not? Number 3. The cursed poem Tamino's Hell. Published by Japanese poet Seiju Yasu, it is said that one of his poems named Tamino's Hell is cursed and could kill or haunt people if read loud. So just to not die, I'll be playing it safe and I'll just show you the poem rather than reading it. In 1974, Japanese filmmaker Terayama Tsuji directed a movie based on Tamino's Hell. Unfortunately, he ended up passing away in 1983. This is where people first believed that the movie was cursed, since the poem was used and read in the movie. As time went by, people began forgetting about the incident, but then in 2004, one Japanese writer published a book based on the poem, saying, quote, "If you by chance happen to read the poem out loud, after you will suffer from a terrible fate which cannot be escaped." It's said that even hearing someone saying the poem out loud can lead your life into disaster or even death. So let's read it out loud. I'm just kidding, everyone relax. Nowadays, this poem is feared internationally, but for those who remain skeptical, come on, give this one a read. Number 2, The Curse of the Colonel. This might be odd to hear, but apparently a baseball team in the Kansai region of Japan named the Hanshin Tigers are supposedly cursed by the ghost of Colonel Sanders. Yes, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. According to legend, the curse was placed on the team because of the colonel's anger over the treatment of one of his storefront statues, which was thrown in the Dotonbori River by celebrating Haitian fans after their team victory in the 1985 Japanese Championship. Japan Championship Series. The curse was said to explain the team's subsequent 18-year losing streak, and many people believe that the team would never win another Japanese series until the statue was recovered. The curse has also been compared to the curse of the Bambino, which is said to afflict the Boston Red Sox until they won the World Series in 2004. Despite the supposed curse, the Haitian Tigers have appeared in the Japan Series 3 times since the statue has been thrown into the river, losing in 2003, losing in 2005, and losing in 2014. Whether or not the curse of the Colonel is real, it has become an enduring and fascinating part of the Japanese sports legends, and also the first time I've ever heard of the Kentucky Fried Chicken founder cursing something. Number 1, human sacrifice at the Meiyoroka Castle. The Meiyoroka Castle, also known as the Mist Castle, is a Hirayama-style Japanese castle located in the city of Sakai. It is considered to be one of the oldest castles in Japan and is said to be protected by a mist that appears whenever an enemy is nearby. According to the legend, the castle was built at the end of the Sengoku period in the 1500s with the use of human sacrifice known as hitobashira. The practice of hitobashira, or human pillars, was believed to appease deities and protect against natural and man-made disasters. For those who don't know, it is basically making humans into the stone pillars and the walls that make up a building. It was commonly used in the construction of large buildings such as castles, dams, and bridges. However, the story of Meiyoroka's castle's hitobashira centers around a woman named Oshizu, who is a poor one-eyed mother of 2. When the construction of the castle was plagued by problems and the walls kept collapsing, a vassal suggested the use of human sacrifice, and this is when Oshizu was chosen for the sacrifice, and she only agreed to this on the condition that one of her children would be made into a samurai. Oshizu was entombed under the pillars of the castle, with stones being placed on top of her as she was slowly being crushed to death. It is said that she accepted her fate stoically, knowing that her children would have a better future as a result. After her sacrifice, the walls of the castle remained standing, and the construction continued without further issues. However, the man responsible for the castle's construction, Shibata Katsutoya, did not follow through on his promise to make Oshizu's son a samurai. As a result, Oshizu's spirit returned to haunt the castle, causing the moat to overflow every spring in a phenomenon known as the Tears of Oshizu. To this day, the Meiyoroka Castle is said to be haunted by the vengeful spirit of Oshizu. Some claim to have seen her ghost wandering the castle grounds or heard her haunting cries in the castle during some nights.